So, parallel and perpendicular lines are very much seen in algebra, and that's what we're going to talk about today. First of all, let's talk about the symbols that we're going to use to represent parallel and perpendicular lines. So, if we want to say that two lines are parallel, we will use this symbol. So, let's say we want to say that line A is parallel to line B, then we'd say line A parallel to line B. Then on the other hand, we have perpendicular lines, which form a 90-degree angle and are represented with this symbol. So if we wanted to say that line A is perpendicular to line B, we'd show it this way. Now, if we see them on a graph, parallel lines are lines that are going in the same direction but never ever touch. So a parallel to that black line I just drew there would be something like this, that we would see it, right? But the most important thing is that the slope of the black line is going to equal the slope of the red line. Now for the perpendicular lines, we're going to see them intersecting, forming 90-degree angles. So if we have a line going this way, like the first one, a perpendicular line, show it in red, will intersect it and form a 90-degree angle. Now, the most important thing is that we can see that the slope of the first line equals the negative reciprocal of the other. So we would have to flip the fraction and apply a negative sign to it. So if it's negative, it would turn into a positive number, and if it's a positive number, it would turn into a negative number. Depending on the problem that we're given, we're gonna do obviously different things. So let's say we have the equation for the line equal, say y equals 6x plus 1. Let's review what this means. So we have an equation given in the slope-intercept form, where the slope is going to be right next to the x. So that means that the slope for this specific line equals 6, or 6 over 1, which is essentially the same thing. Now, if we want to see what the parallel or the slope of a parallel line to it would be, we must remember that a parallel will have, or two parallel lines will have the same slope. So a parallel line to this equation would have the same slope. However, if we wanted a perpendicular line, it would be a little different. Like we said, it must be the negative reciprocal. So what we have to do is flip the fraction, that's the reciprocal. So we would have a 1 over 6 instead of 6 over 1. And then it has to be the opposite of that slope. So 6 over 1 is positive, and the perpendicular line must have a negative slope. Now, in order to find an equation for a parallel or perpendicular line, it's a tad different here. So let's say we have this problem where we have to find a line that passes through the point -2, 4, and is parallel to the line y equals 1/2 x plus 1. First and foremost, we have to identify the slope, just like we did on the last lines. So since y equals 1/2 x plus 1, we have the equation essentially in slope-intercept form, which is in the what I said, y equals mx plus b form, where the slope would be 1/2, because that's the m value. So we have the slope that equals 1/2, and we just said that a parallel line must, or two parallel lines must have equal slope. So this new line must have the same slope as the first one. Now, we have to use the point slope form of the line equation. Now let's copy that in blue. So it would be y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1, where the values of y sub 1 and x sub 1 are points. And we have those points that come from the new line. So since we have that information given, we must substitute those into our equation. So we would have y minus, our y value would be 4, equals our m value that we just determined was 1/2, right here, times x minus our x value, which is -2. So don't forget that negative sign. Now we're left to simplify the equation, and we know how to do that. So that would be y minus 4 equals 1/2 x, because we have to use the distributive property, times +2, because a negative times a negative equals a positive. So +2 times 1/2 will equal 2/2, which we know equals 1. So we would have y minus 4 equals 1/2 x plus 1. We are almost done. All we have to do is change this guy and take him to the other side of the equation, which would be y equals 1/2 x plus 1 plus 4, because we changed the sign since we're taking it to a new side of the equation. And then we would have y equals 1/2 x plus 5. And that would be our final equation. And see how they have the same slope. And that's what we want, because we want a parallel line to this guy over here.